Back here in HQ presented by Enterprise, and the saga continues. The NCAA and Power 5 conferences jointly announcing they've agreed to a settlement in terms of the House antitrust case. Now, the settlement will pay out nearly $3 billion in back damages to pre-NIL athletes dating back to 2016, along with current student athletes. Moving forward, it's going to create a new compensation model that will allow schools to share as much as $22 million annually with athletes in a capped system. Now, the 5 conferences involved in the settlement: the ACC, the Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and SEC, alongside the NCAA. Now, this paves the way for future revenue sharing plans and will change the landscape of college sports as we know it, which I feel like we have said so many times over the last few years. Congressman Colin Allred, also a former linebacker at Baylor, weighing in on the latest news and what lies ahead for college sports as we know it. In a statement, it says, as someone who struggled financially as captain of the Baylor football team, I know that too often college sports are lucrative for everyone but the student athletes themselves. This settlement marks an end to that era, and that is a positive step. However, I am concerned about the implications for Title IX, less profitable sports, and schools outside of the power conferences unless this is implemented correctly. I hope we can continue to work on a national standard around name, image, and likeness and maintain the diversity of college sports. Brady Quinn with us here on HQ as Congressman Allred. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have this conversation with you, talking about the landscape of college sports. It's just another wrinkle, another chapter since 2016. We keep talking about evolving. And Congressman, as somebody who has played the game at the college level well before we got to this point, and your role in Congress, what does this mean for college football?
Well, I think it's a dramatic change, as you said. And I just have to say, and Brady knows this, I wouldn't be where I am today without the opportunity that college sports gave me. The scholarship that I got at Baylor set me on the path to go into law school, to playing in the NFL, of course, but then also having a chance to serve in Congress. And so, to me, this is an incredibly important institution on top of being an incredibly profitable one. And as we've seen, this become, such a big business now. It always had to come to this, that at some point the players who were generating so much revenue for everyone else were going to have to benefit from that themselves. As I said in that statement, I really struggled when I was at Baylor financially, and I was on scholarship, but after I paid my rent and my bills, there wasn't much left over. But at the same time, I was playing a video game, the NCAA football game at that time, with my player, number 34, middle linebacker for Baylor, 6'2", 235 from Dallas. And I wasn't seeing any of that revenue, right? And I think that wasn't right either. So we have to make sure we do this right now. As we're moving into a new era, we have to make sure that as athletes are getting compensated, that we maintain some of the elements of collegiate sports I think we all love.
Congressman, thank you for taking the time to join us. I want to begin just by asking something that you mentioned in your statement, talking about the implementation of this court decision. How do you see this decision creating frameworks around what this revenue sharing looks like for schools, the student athletes, collectives, everyone involved? Are they going to remain student athletes, or with this decision, is there going to be a move potentially to make them employees?
Well, I think before this, I was always somebody who thought that moving towards an employee model was one that I wanted to avoid, because Brady, you and I both were employees in the NFL, and we know what that comes with, and that also means you have to have collective bargaining rights and be able to organize and find ways to set out agreements. But I think we're moving in that direction, certainly after this agreement. And I think we need to have federal legislation to try and set national standards around this now. So that we're not seeing dramatically different laws state to state and region to region and conference to conference, quite honestly. And we need to also find specific ways to protect Title IX and to protect some of the what we call, I guess now, non-revenue sports that I think, as I said, to me are really important. And they're going to, those are scholarship generating opportunities for young men and women that will change their lives. I want to maintain that. I don't want to see those go away. And I also certainly want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that has gender equity and parity in terms of this cannot just be something that only benefits men's sports, at the expense of women's sports. So we need to have congressional leadership, and that's been something that's been hard for us to find consensus around. But as somebody who has a lot of experience with this, I've been working on it for some time. And I think there is a way forward, particularly now that I think all of our universities are going to be telling all of us to please act.
Congressman, as we look at the result of this decision, we know that eventually now the players will receive a portion of this revenue share that universities will be able to pay out. The question in my mind still becomes, what about the collectives, the alumni funds that have been surrounding around a lot of the different programs that are still out there providing NIL opportunities? Do you see them existing, coexisting with this settlement and with schools still paying them and being on the outside of it, or is that going to change in the future?
Yeah, Brady, I think it's going to change. I do. And I think that, I've been hearing a lot about donor fatigue, which I guess is a way of saying that folks who've been paying into these collectives are already getting kind of tired of it. And that wasn't my initial thought in terms of what NIL should be anyway. I think what that collectives became is what this ruling is now going to enforce, which is basically being paid for being on the team when you're generating so much revenue. Those collectives were trying to fill that gap, basically, previously. And so I think they'll change. I'm sure they will still have some role, but that was not my initial thought, that that's where NIL would go. I wanted it to be that if they were using your name, image, or likeness, that you could be compensated for that, not being paid in that direct way. And that's what we're going to see now because of this settlement. So I think the collectives will certainly change, and we need to still have some standards around that. Because that is open to abuse as well. And so in all these areas, I think we need to have some work in terms of setting some national standards, not trying to come in and dictate everything, but just to level the playing field and create some certainty in what is becoming, I think, an incredibly uncertain landscape.
Yeah, there was a conversation about some of those collectives potentially being an arm of the marketing departments of those specific colleges, right. But we don't obviously know for sure how this is all going to play out. Congressman, I want to circle back to something you said about Title IX and being able to maintain those programs that are non-revenue programs. Maybe they don't have those huge TV deals and those huge contracts, but you said, hey, I think there is a way to maintain that. What does that look like in this conversation for those non-revenue sports?
Yeah, well, it may be that there is a separation that occurs in terms of the way these are looked at and regulated between the revenue and non-revenue sports. But it has to be, in my opinion, that we maintain that these are scholarship opportunities, that these sports continue to exist, they continue to offer life-changing access to education to young people. That has to continue. And so what we have to balance this out is as some of these sports that are creating this enormous amount of revenue and that are also going to be then paying these players more, those are obviously have to be treated differently than a sport that's a non-revenue sport. Because if you try and spread that across all of the different sports, then you probably will end up with none of them being financially sustainable. And so we're probably going to have a separation there. And that also may involve federal legislation. So again, this is about creating a framework in which the diversity, and what I mean by that is the diversity of sports, the diversity of opportunities, the fact that if you went to Baylor on a track scholarship, you could become Michael Johnson and and win gold medals and help us elevate our profile at Baylor. But that's not a revenue earning sport. Or you could also do, as I did, and play football, that those opportunities still exist. And that's what I want to maintain.
Congressman, I want to ask you kind of a twofold question. The first being the timing of all of this. When can we start to see Congress act? It feels like the NCAA has been lobbying extremely hard in D.C. to get some sort of, I guess, framework, backbone, anything that would stop them from continually losing in court. And it feels like the settlement maybe, I don't know, expedites that potentially happening. And the other thing is, how does this settlement protect them from potential antitrust lawsuits that we know have been a big deal across the country, state by state, school by school? What kind of protections can the universities receive and the NCAA can receive from this particular settlement?
That now has to be a discussion, Brady, and I think you're right to focus on that. The antitrust element of this is part of why the NCAA really doesn't operate anymore as a governing body, and so we'll have to address that, I think. And you're right, we have had a lot of lobbying around this, particularly around NIL. But now the entire landscape has changed, and so we have to look at this more comprehensively and not just at NIL. but also, of course, as I said, at the frameworks around how do you maintain Title IX, how do you maintain non-revenue sports, how do you also set a national standard for the revenue-earning sports. And I actually had a bill in the 117th Congress, previous Congress, with Anthony Gonzalez, who went to Ohio State and was a first-round pick for the Colts, and he and I played against each other, and so there's been bipartisan efforts here going on, and those will continue. I've urged our committee that has this in their jurisdiction to start working on this. I'm not on that committee, unfortunately, but I think I have a little bit of an expert opinion to offer. So, listen, there's going to be an enormous amount of pressure from all of our universities. I hear about it from Baylor, my alma mater. I hear about it from the Big 12, where I played. And I think that's good. And I think also, folks out there should feel free to contact your member of Congress and say, hey, listen, I think that we should really make sure that as we're moving into this new era, that we do it in as fair a way as possible.
Congressman, finally, big picture. There are a million ways to talk about this, and no one really knows definitively how it's all going to play out. But you did share your experience back when you were playing with Baylor. Do you think college athletes now moving forward are in a better position in terms of NIL and things like that than they were when you were playing with Baylor?
Yeah, such a good question, actually, because I think it's quite complicated. Yes, financially, probably. But I chose to go to Baylor because I thought it was the best school for me, and it was an hour and a half away from where I grew up in Dallas. My family could come see me play. If I had been offered more money by a different school that had been that maybe wasn't as good of a fit, I don't know how 18-year-old me would have responded to that, and maybe I would not have been set on the path that I've been set on. And so I want to try as much as possible to maintain that while these athletes are doing a fantastic job creating an incredible product. College football has never been better, in my opinion, and not just college football, but also college basketball and some of these things. We just saw Caitlin Clark's impact on not just the college women's basketball, but now the WNBA. That's all fantastic. But most of these folks are not going to play professionally. Most of these folks who are going to our universities and who are playing on Saturdays are going to, have to get another job. And their college degree is going to have a huge impact on that. And that's one of the things that I always want to keep at the center of this project, that you do have an opportunity to go to a school that's a good fit for you, where you get a good education, and where, no matter how long you play afterwards, you were able to then be a productive citizen. For me, it was 5 years. I got injured in my 5th year in the NFL. But for everyone, it's coming at some point. Brady knows this. We all know this. At some point, you have to do something else. And I think this is the real life-changing aspect of college sports is also in the opportunity to get that degree and to go to a school that's a good fit for you. So I don't want to see us just have a consolidation at the top. I want to see us maintain that you can go to some of these smaller schools, get a good education, and come out and do great things. And that, to me, is the overall diversity of collegiate sports that we all want to maintain.
Well said. Congressman, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate your insight and helping to kind of create a less chaotic college football world, college sports world too with all this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you, Brady.